I love working in tech because
Innovation happens every day, and this is defining the future.
what surprises me about the startup world is
That things are so dynamic and different and unpredictable.
the 4-day working week is
Wonderful, but it's hard to achieve.
the idea of basic income is
I think it's great. I'm a social person, so great.
the leader I would like to take to dinner is
I would like to go to dinner with Pat Gelsinger, our ex-CEO and currently CEO of Intel.
I get inspiration from.
I get inspiration from my sister. She's 7 years older than me, but I've learned so much from her, and I keep learning every day, so I admire her.
I hope that she will be watching us. This is really kind. My mission is
To help make the world a better place.
Thank you very much, Diana. Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in again in the Recursive podcast. I'm very delighted today because I have a guest that I have been admiring so far from the distance, and it's my first time when I'm going to speak to her in person. Diana Stefanova is the Vice President Regional Community Strategy of the biggest IT company here in Bulgaria, called VMware. She has a very solid background in finance, but also expertise in strategic and business development, both for startups and global companies. She is also a partner in the venture capital fund BrightCapVentures and has supported and mentored a lot of startup companies in the region and beyond. As a female leader, Diana is a vocal supporter of gender equality in the tech world. Diana, it's my pleasure to have you here.
Hello.
Hello.
Great to be here.
My first question will bring you a bit back in time when you were just starting your career. I read in an interview that technology chose you. You chose finance. And in this sense, I wanted to ask you, how did this fate happen to you? And do you think that in a way your background in finance and your background in math helps you now be a better leader in the technology sector?
Absolutely. I think ever since I was little, I was really good at math. And I often talk about this, technology chose me, I chose finance, because I think it could possibly help young girls make the right choices at an early age. The reality is that back in the times, engineering jobs were not that well established here in Bulgaria, and there were not many women in engineering. So a logical thing for me was, after graduating from the Sofia Math School, to pursue career in finance. And banking was booming at the time. So I really pursued that path. And I have to say, I was really good at finance. I'm good at numbers. So anyone that's good at numbers, of course, will be good at finance. But the reality is that when I started my career in US, I started in technology startups. And I really deep dived into the technology field from the first days of my career. So while I achieved good development in career levels and opportunities in the finance field, soon that happened when I came back from US to Bulgaria. I started looking towards more strategic roles in leadership roles, and at some point the general management role. So yes, the math and finance has helped me develop to where I am today. And I think I could have been just as good in the engineering field as well. And I encourage many girls today considering different careers to drop the stereotypes of thinking, oh, is engineering or more hardcore jobs more good for young girls, or is it better to pursue careers in other more communications or PR or other areas that might be perceived as being better for girls? Because you need all of those qualities to be successful in any job. So just because you're good in communication doesn't mean that you cannot be a extremely good engineering leader that is supposed to communicate and present and ultimately combine all of those great qualities to be successful.
Already from your answer, I have so many aspects that I would like, to dive deep into. Maybe let's start with the topic of women, because I see, your emotion when you speak about, and I see that you are a very strong supporter also of women in technology, but also women on their path to career. I'm going to start with this question. Did leadership chose you as well, or was it something that you anticipated at some point? And when did this change or this career path became something thinkable for you?
Great question. I first will start with differentiating between management and leadership. And we often talk about this. Like early in our careers, we learn to be great managers. And leadership is something that you could develop from very young age, because leaders are those that can inspire, they can lead, they can have people follow and believe. Many people have natural leadership skills, and this is really easy to build. I mean, you could be a leader in an individual contributor role, right, professional role, and you could be a leader as a manager. But being a leader is something really important for us to be successful in any type of business. However, leadership skills you can develop as well. Particularly for me, early in my career, I was in US, and very fast my career developed, and I was given an opportunity to be a manager. And I had to learn on the job, really. With the years of experience, I started gaining those more people-oriented leadership type of skills, and focusing on those and really building on the top of the managerial skills. Mm-hmm. Am I a good leader today? That's something for everybody else to say, but it's definitely something that I think is extremely important for each business.
I can imagine that in our audience there are, younger girls who might have the opportunity to become a leader, or might have the opportunity to step into a managerial role where they're supposed to be leaders, and maybe they have some doubts. I just wanted you maybe to remember, when you were given this opportunity, what were your first, worries or maybe doubts that you have, and how did you tackle them? How did you manage them internally? What did you tell yourself?
We always have doubts when we're giving a new opportunity, especially women. We really want to be perfect in everything that we do. So unless we've had hundreds of years of experience in one area, we feel we probably are not ready. Of course, I'm exaggerating here, but anyways, we always have doubts. What's important is to believe in yourself. I've learned to believe in myself early in my career because I was able to demonstrate results. Mm-hmm. So once you start demonstrating results, you kind of say, okay, if I can do this, I can do more. And just give yourself a chance to achieve more and more. Stretch yourself. Set yourself ambitious goals. And I think if it doesn't work out, if something goes wrong, that's okay. We learn from our mistakes. We go back, we revisit, and we continue. For all of those girls that might have some doubts, as I said, number one, believe in yourself and try things. Even if things don't work out, experiment, because through experimentation, people learn and they develop and progress. So I remember one of the biggest mistakes I've made early in my managerial job was to kind of micromanage a little bit. And this is what I tell all of the managers, like, just to become managers in the organization. And I give them example with myself. One of the things that we tend to do when we just get promoted to a manager is to micromanage, because we are usually subject matter experts in the area that we have been working on. We know everything and how it needs to be done, right? We are not detached because we grow up, right? And often we just expect things to be done our way. So it takes a little bit of adjustment to let go. And that's probably one of the first exams for managers that are new managers. Just let go and let people make mistakes and just monitor from a distance and course correct when that's necessary.
So Diana, now you're in the position where you're also the one promoting the next generation of leaders, the next generation of managers. You can teach them from giving example. You can also mentor them. What qualities you would be looking at when you're promoting the next leaders, for example, in your organization, especially in women? How do you recognize them?
So whether women or not, I guess we look for the same type of qualities anyways. So definitely we are not going to be looking for somebody that knows everything, right? Because all the information is available. So people can learn as long as they're eager to learn, as long as they would like to experiment, try new things, and work in very complex environments, because things are not simple. So people need to try new things and not be afraid to go into the unknown. So those are the type of qualities that I would definitely value big time when deciding on who to attract to our team or who to promote.
I was thinking also something else because of your background in finance and math. Maybe this is my prejudice, but I imagine people with a mindset like yours going or being able to go into details, seeing the little mistakes, maybe being a bit too pedantic. I'm sorry if probably I'm totally wrong, but this is my prejudice. I'm just speaking out loud. How do you develop from this position to a leadership position where, as a leader, you're supposed to have the big picture, to see the big picture, to anticipate in a way the future, have the vision, and communicate it also to others, to those you're leading?
So definitely, I think going into the detail is something that I really was good at early in my career. Over the years, with experimenting with different roles, I had to detach from the details. And that's why I gave you the example of the first several months of my managerial experience, where I really was into the details. And that detachment started happening, and I started learning how to monitor things. And with that, I started seeing the big picture. And when we speak about the big picture, depending on what level you are, your big picture is different. Like your first line manager, you see the big picture of your team. You're a director, you start seeing a whole the department. You're moving towards a general management, you see multiple functions. And then there's no way you can go in all of the details. But you need to have the ability to pick the right context, switch context actually between meetings. I mean, you'll be surprised a single day of mine, every single meeting is a different context, right? And switch context and be able to understand what people are saying while not having all of the details. Ask for the details when that's necessary. And often you start operating with high level data, not by what exactly has happened, the activity that happened, but show me the data, show me the results. Okay, so percentage, like for example, if we're talking about HR, attrition rates, termination rates. So you start looking at the big picture rather than who exactly did leave. And sometimes you need to ask if it's a key talent that or somebody that is really critical for the business. Of course, you need to go into the detail and go talk to these people and even convince them, if possible, to stay. However, in that example, because we're speaking about attrition now, but understanding the big picture, looking at the data that gives you the insights of the business is what gives you an opportunity to elevate. So I think that balance between looking at the big picture and deep diving when necessary into the details is something you develop over time.
In addition to that, so you mentioned that you're switching context, and you're switching context not only within the organization of VMware, but you're switching context also in your role as a venture partner at BrightCapVentures, and both of your positions are pretty much determined by the mega trends that we see now in digital transformation and in innovation. So in your role, you're in a way expected to anticipate the future, right? Where are we going to go to, and where is it worth to invest? Where is it also, both from corporate point of view, but also from a venture capital point of view? How do you perform this role? What is your secret?
Well, I don't know whether there's a secret, but definitely, I think in both of my roles, we're looking towards the future. We're making decisions on where to invest, looking at VMware, which area to invest in, what's the future, is it IoT, is it blockchain, and cryptocurrency. That's not our business, of course, at VMware, but I'm just giving trends, quantum computing or anything that's coming our way. So monitoring what's happening on the market is extremely important in both of the jobs that I have. And the reality is that being part of such a big organization like VMware, you have a lot of insights, right? You have a lot of smart people that you work with. So through discussions and gathering different points of view, we learn a lot. So it's not just reading what's in the media or what's in the research, but also talking among ourselves. So that's extremely valuable. Working with smart people is extremely valuable because we live and breathe all of those innovations and digital transformation that you're talking about. And then transferring that to the investment world, that same thing is happening, although at a bigger scale, because while at VMware we might be focusing on the digital transformation on the cloud field, here we're talking about, different consumer businesses and everything else. And that's what makes it interesting and challenging, because you sometimes go out of the context that you operate in every day and look for other things that could impact the way we think innovatively, creatively in the core business at VMware as well. So I think this is valuable experience, and as leaders, we need to understand all sides of the business. I'm not saying I understand all sides of the business, but when we see a business on the startup side of things that looks compelling, interesting, then that triggers our interest, and we start reading about it, learning more about it, and even attracting experts. Sometimes we need to talk to people that we know from our network and get some additional insights. And that's why we have a good advisory board of experts in different fields that could help us with that as well. So I think switching context is a must in everything we do. So we need to learn to kind of be successful despite the complex environment we operate in. However, nevertheless, I think sometimes deep diving into the details and understanding certain context, doing the research yourself is something very valuable in everything that you do.
Mm. I believe that predicting the future in a way has been made even more difficult, especially with the events of the past year. And I'm speaking here about the pandemics. For a couple of months, I think we were all unsure of how this is going to affect us, both in our everyday life, but also from an economic point of view. And here I can, imagine in a way the discussions also in a company like VMware, which, being part of this digital transformation, and also being in the center of how are we going to merge all these people who have been going to the office every day now to a totally new environment, has been very interesting and exciting. And how was it actually from your point of view? I mean, I know that you're also responsible for the topic of future of work. So
yep, that's very near and dear to my heart, and I operate in with that focus probably over a year now. The only thing I'll argue is that we're still in an unknown situation, unfortunately, and we hope things are going to end soon or develop positively, but we don't know. So in terms of future work, that is really a new, like it showed how fast the businesses were able to adapt to this new environment, which is something technology was able to help and support. Specifically, VMware, we offer this anywhere workforce solutions. So, and we all use those internally. So, each one of us was able to switch to remote working overnight. Just take your laptop, go home, and everything was well established. And I'm very proud that our productivity was not hurt at all. In fact, in the first several months, our productivity was even more, at least 20-30%. There was some analysis that were being done than what it was before, because we stopped commuting. We had time for the family, but also sometimes if you have to resolve something in the evening and take some time during the day to spend time with family, that balance actually worked very well. Now, there's some disadvantages, of course, because we are social human beings and we would like to connect with people, see people. So I do think that the future, when we speak about future work, is more hybrid. And we at VMware are going to give our employees choice and flexibility to decide where and how they would like to work. Because technology obviously offers us the freedom to work from anywhere. You can, and now many people are deciding, do they want to go to the office 2-3 days a week in the future after the pandemic, or do they want to be completely remotely working, or do they want to be in the office all the time? We are transforming our offices towards the so-called collaboration hubs. So really, the entire design of the office will be around collaboration. So you go to the office to collaborate, less to do individual work, because you can do individual work from anywhere. But when it comes to collaboration, you need to have the settings. And in the past, we only had conference rooms, but now we are redesigning even the working stations. So they're kind of clubbed together with a single monitor. So you see those new ways of new designs everywhere throughout the office. The good news is that part of our office, you probably know that we moved to a new office last year in February, and the pandemic hit us in March. So we were able to enjoy the office for a month, which was nice, but not enough. We had 2-3 floors that were not finished. So because of the pandemic, we did the complete redesign. So we have the last phase of our office was designed with collaboration first in mind, and we'll get to test that and how it works. We also already have some teams that volunteered to have flexible working, not have assigned seat, but go and sit anywhere depending on the type of work that you would like to do that day. So we'll see how that works. We'll gather some input and maybe try to redesign the rest of our offices if that makes sense, right? So it's interesting times. And the good news is that with this new wave, the companies are going to go where talent is. That will give everybody more opportunities. We are not going to be required to hire only in places where we have sites, offices, or collaboration hubs, as per the new terminology. We can hire anywhere. And that will give people more opportunities to develop, step up, access to jobs that they probably didn't have before because they were operating from a country where that specific career opportunity did not exist. So I think it gives huge opportunities to the business to go and follow the best talent in the world. It gives great opportunities to the workforce to access jobs that might have not been available before.
In this sense, are there new opportunities also opening up for Sofia as an innovation hub? I mean, so far we have built this wonderful image as a very productive outsourcing destination, and I think in a way the next logical step and the next logical stage would be for us, to move a bit more towards an innovation hub. But we cannot be an innovation hub without attracting the right talent, as you mentioned. somehow, investments and opportunities, they follow the people, they follow talent. How do you
So I
see
think
that?
we absolutely need to retain our talent and develop our talent. This is a must for us to be successful um, from any side of the business, right? So we do need to develop and attract and retain our talent. Now, having said that, I think in the past, many of the businesses were focusing more on the outsourcing side of the business. Then you need people, heads, to be located into that country that the investment is happening towards. Now, if you're innovation hub, you could have strong expertise residing in that hub, but you can have talent everywhere. So we are starting to experiment with this actually at VMware because we think that we have managed to develop this an innovation hub for VMware over the years with very, very solid expertise in the cloud space. So now we're starting to experiment with hiring people from anywhere close by where the expertise and the hub approach is within VMware Bulgaria, but the talent could be anywhere. So one easy reach is to hire people from all over Bulgaria, right? They don't have to come to Sofia to be part of the innovation that's happening within VMware Bulgaria. But now we're even expanding that further and starting to hire people from other countries, from Poland, from Macedonia, from Russia. And we are not expecting them necessarily to relocate unless they want to. And while this is not creating, those jobs are not new jobs for Bulgaria, right? But as long as the expertise and the core leadership and the innovation happens at the hub, I'm not worried of having people anywhere because we do need to follow the trend and hire people anywhere.
And if you're just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.
Do you see that also a thinkable way for startups? We know that, and you've been also to the Silicon Valley, you have this experience. I mean, you've seen innovation happening in different sizes of organizations. And in a startup, we often see this, or we imagine it like a hackathon, people working till late together, having pizza, drinking beer, something that wasn't really possible during the pandemics. Do you see this trend of working from anywhere, hiring from anywhere as a trend? Applicable also for startups?
I absolutely do. Obviously, it's always easy to sit in one room, and especially if you're a startup, small company, you get things done very fast. The reality is that at some point you get larger and larger, and you cannot sit in a single room anymore. And sometimes you cannot find the right talent in that single room or country or city, right? So if we want to attract top world talent, even in the startups, we need to start thinking of being very agile and working from anywhere. In fact, I support one of the startups from our portfolio at BrightCap, which is called ScaleFlex. So this is how they've been designed. They operate from something like 10 different countries, and they have multiple nationalities, and they get together on a regular basis in a single room, but everybody works from different places. So they are less than 30 people, and they have people in Asia, Vietnam, Singapore. They have people in Bulgaria, in Ukraine, Egypt, and
Germany,
Munich and France. So I probably will miss a few.
Yeah.
But anyway, they've been extremely successful, and this is how they started. And they follow the talent, and they're proving that that works for a startup quite well. And yes, there's certain things that you need to embed into the process of operation, like in how people connect, how people operate, what's the touch points. There always need to be regular touch points because otherwise people get disconnected. So there's a special way of managing distributed teams that need to be implemented. But once you get into that habit, things work, and they have proven to work.
That's very encouraging. This is also in a way that I see our own organization being at the Recursive. I think in the beginning we were already equipped technologically for working from anywhere, and we have been giving ourselves this opportunity to sit whatever we feel comfortable. And still, when we speak about processes and when we speak also about leadership, there is a lot to think about of how do you lead an organization which is distributed, and how do you design processes so that they are applicable in this way. Um, I find it's very interesting that it's not only a technological aspect of distributed work. There is
Of
so much more
course,
to that.
of course. Not technology is key for the success, though, I have to say, because sometimes even little brainstorming boards that are you can do online can improve productivity. So technology is extremely important. However, I think processes and managerial styles and practices are extremely important as well. So touch points, so maybe daily touch points, practices like, can we always be on camera so we can see each other, right? Because sometimes you wake up in the morning or it's late at night, you don't want to be shown on camera. But as long as it's within working hours, I think it's okay to be on camera. Because this is how you make things more personable. But this is just a practice. In terms of leadership, I think, so let's start with management first. Management have regular touch points, have different ways of connecting multiple times, either every day or every week, whatever the business requires, right? Manage people based on results, not so much on how many hours did they spend on something. So, and that's a good practice anyway. So whether it's distributed or not, like focus on the results and make sure that you kind of monitor how stretched people are. So you always want them to be a little stretched and be a little outside of the comfort zone, because if they're too much into the comfort zone, they get bored. So a little stretching is something that the leader needs to find a way to implement despite the distributed environment, right? And I have to admit that's much harder when you don't see the people every day. I have to admit that. But then more conversations, discussions, topics, and topics to kind of deep dive towards. The other difficult part is sometimes people might feel uncomfortable with something, but not be willing to say that. And into a more close conversation, the body language or everything else, you're still able to pick signs and understand that something is wrong and find ways to resolve it. Now, with the camera, I have to admit that's harder, right? So we need to compensate with more conversation and openness. I think the hybrid. So I'll go to the hybrid part. The regular touch points would be required face to face, because I think this is how we'll start balancing between the really detached Zoom, we call that Zoomification.
Zoomification, exactly.
And then of course the personable face-to-face conversation. So that balance is probably the future. Completely detached might be a little hard. Even in the Scale Flex example, what they're doing is they do have regular, whether it's quarterly or sometimes monthly, touch points where everybody gets together and they spend a week or two working together. So I think that would be required for a successful setup.
There is also, because you mentioned that in this zoomificated way of working, we're losing, this personable touch in the conversations. And it's very interesting because yesterday I met Mr. Stefanova. I know that you know him too, and we were speaking about trust and how much more challenging it is for managers and also for leaders in this remote and distributed way of working to not only establish trust but also to get a feeling, is there trust in my organization? Yeah, I personally find it also very difficult. Maybe you can also give me a tip of how to deal with that. Sometimes I feel like I don't have enough empathy for everyone in the organization. I don't give them enough attention, and this is how I'm kind of in doubt that maybe the trust is not there. Do you get this feeling sometimes too?
So it is definitely difficult to develop trust in an environment when you don't have direct interaction. I mean, even with direct interaction, developing trust takes years, right? So you need to be together in good and bad and support each other, and this is how trust is developed. I'm extremely fortunate that I've been able to work with many of my colleagues for many years, and I've been able to develop that trust. So even in a situation where there's remote working, we can quickly touch base on the phone, and even without the face video conversation, we can resolve things because we can speak directly. We can, make a compromise when we have to support each other and make the right decisions for the organization. I do have people that started working with me for me during the pandemic, and however, I talk to them on video every day. And I remember it was probably a couple of months ago when we saw each other in the office for some face-to-face conversation. That person said, "Actually, that's since the interview, that's the first time I see you in person." And I didn't even realize that's the case, because for me, that person has worked for me like for over years, and the trust was there. So I was surprised because that person never let me down through that year. Every time I needed something, even a single email was enough to get that person going and get them to deliver. So it's just a good example that sometimes even without the face-to-face conversation, when we are in it together and when we work and deliver and support each other, that trust is also being developed. Is it easy? No, but obviously it's possible. So again, I will go back to, we need to go back to the hybrid way of working, because it's impossible to do that with everybody. Obviously, people are different. And some people are more introvert, others are more extrovert. And with certain people, you need to have different style. You probably need to have a little bit more face-to-face to get them to open up. With other people, just a single email might be sufficient. So I think we need to be flexible in the way we work and operate for us to be successful in the future.
I also see a leader who has learned, to trust those in the organization, and I think this is probably the start of how do you establish that in a company, in an organization. But this is my interpretation now when I speak to you. I wanted also to bring you back to another aspect of your life. I believe it's maybe something that, in a way, left a mark on your character, on your personality, and this is the time when you were in the States. From my personal experience, I know that being a migrant has a very transformative effect on someone's personality. How was it for you? How long did you spend abroad, living abroad? Yeah.
That's part of my life and my family's life. We joke often that we move very often, sometimes even too often, from country to country or from house to house, and we have friends everywhere. After I graduated from university, me and my husband, we were given the opportunity to go and work in US, and we spent almost 7 years in US, which was a huge transformative experience, as you suggested. We started really, that was early in our career, so we had to start really from entry level and prove ourselves, right? I'm extremely happy that for those years I was able to not only prove myself, but quickly get managerial roles and get to leadership roles in the finance fields of the 2 startups that I worked for. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot professionally, which I was eager to come and transfer here in Bulgaria because I felt that I can give a lot. And I learned a lot as a person, because culturally having to adapt to a whole new environment was not an easy thing, right? And I was at that age, I was 23 at that time, and it was not easy. No one says good things happen easily, right? It was actually very difficult, but that developed us, both me and my husband, the people that we are today. Really, people that are not afraid of difficulties, of problems, and focus on solving those and finding the right solutions. Not afraid to take risks as well, and be able to adapt. Adaptability is probably one of the qualities that I talk to my daughters about. I tell them one of the probably the best qualities in today's world is to quickly adapt, because the world is changing. Look what happened with the pandemic. Look what happened with everything else. So unless we easily adapt, we'll probably will stagger and have difficult time, at least at the minimum. Coming back from US, which was my first kind of longer term period abroad, outside of Bulgaria, I think I've learned to adapt and to think differently, because you always learn when you deep dive into a different environment how people live. Like they're more positive, more open-minded, risk takers. I think Americans are risk takers. They're entrepreneurs. They're willing to, think big and grab every opportunity that goes in front of them. And sometimes Bulgarians, we're a little bit kind of more relaxed, if you wish, or sometimes even we don't believe in ourselves too much. And we should, because every single Bulgarian that I've seen abroad, whether it was a high-level leader, engineer, technology leader, or even somebody that's a construction worker, they have been successful in their field. They established themselves because we're hardworking. There's a lot of smart people, and put into the right environment, we tend to succeed. So those learnings I brought back with me here in Bulgaria, both professionally and personally. I think understanding the cultural aspects of working with Americas, and not just Americas, because being in America, you will learn to work with the whole world, because you work with so many foreigners there. Actually has helped me be successful in a multinational company like VMware, because you have to apply different styles despite the different environments that you dive into. So that's probably some of the learning I brought back with me. I learned to be positive from a personal aspect. I remember some of my first returns here to Bulgaria, and I first day after I come back from US, and that was not my permanent return, but one of the vacations. And me and my dad, we go into a cafe, and I enter the cafe. I say, in Bulgarian, of course, "Hello, good morning. How are you?" And I remember people like the bartender looking at me, and it's like, "What's wrong with her?" And then I turn to my dad and say,
"What's wrong with that?
Did I say anything wrong?" He said, "The way you greeted her was very, very personable, just like you know her." So she wasn't sure how to react to that. So those type of things, obviously, it took me one weird look at from her to me to adapt again back to the Bulgarian style. However, I think they stayed with me, so you apply them appropriately as needed.
Well, I remember in my case as well, when I moved back 3 years ago, in a way, I was reintegrating myself back to Bulgaria because I spent like 11 years in Vienna. And although I think the cultural difference is smaller than between, Bulgaria and the States, um, than in my case, between Austria and Bulgaria, I was still, feeling myself like I don't really belong here yet. I mean, I speak the language, I know some of the people, I do know the traditions, but I was still feeling totally out of place. This is kind of, a funny aspect that you have in the beginning when you move back. And I think another thing that struck me is when I announced my decision that I would like, to move back, the reaction was similar, to the woman in the cafe. They looked at me and what's wrong with her? Like, are you crazy? Was it like that for you as well?
Yes, not with my family. My family was very supportive, and they said you're smart enough, you and your husband, to make the right choices here. So, and of course, we'll be more than happy to have you home, close to us. But in terms of whether that's the right thing professionally and personally, we'll let you make the decision. So my family was very supportive. But I did have a lot of friends, or not even close friends, but like more people that I know. They would look at me and said, "Okay, she probably failed, and that's why she's coming back."
Or maybe she became criminal.
Or maybe, well, maybe not that much, but
but this is something also that I heard at some point.
Yeah. So there was this debate: if you're coming back, maybe you failed. And for me, it was important that we come back because we succeeded. And I think we reached, of course, we could have developed even further. That was like 2004 when I came back, still early in my career, but at high levels. And we felt that that was just before Bulgaria went into EU, like become part of EU, and that opened a lot of opportunities. My husband started a business into investment in real estate and construction, architecture, and then me myself, I started with the company, one of the first companies in the IT industry, Scient, which we later sold to VMware. Those type of experiences, you probably cannot get that fast in US. I'm not undermining US. Of course, you could achieve a lot there, and people get a lot of chances. But the best place for you to be successful is always home. And I think if you get the experience and apply it here, and adjust it as per the local expectations and environment, then I think things work out the best. So yeah, there was some people wondering why did they come back, but now, so many years after, when I look back, I would say I think we made the right decision, and I think that's what matters. It's like 17 years ago that we came back from US. And later we went to Germany. So I'm not saying that people should not travel and experience new things and work in different environments. But if given an opportunity and for them to bring this back home, I think that always goes a long way.
And what would you advise your daughters, for instance, staying here, traveling, gathering experience, also working for a corporate, working for a startup, because you know all the words, you have your own experience. How do you, what kind of tips do you give to them?
So it's they have some way to go when they start thinking about career. Right now, my advices are around education, and I stress math heavily with them. And maybe that's why they say they hate math, but they're good at math. So, but I think math is important. So I try to pass this to them. In terms of education and in the context of Bulgaria internationally, they have their choices. They can, based on what they would like to become, they have their choices of studying in Bulgaria, in Europe, in US. And there's nothing better than having a choice. I think that's probably the most important thing, having that choice and picking the option that will best get you the career that you would like to develop towards. Now, my daughters already lived in Germany for many years, and they relocated back. So they are starting to feel the different environments and the change that comes with that, the adaptability side of things, and they know that whatever it takes, the world is global, so they will have options and they will try things. Now, if I was to advise them on startup versus corporate today, which I have not had that discussion with them yet, but if I was to advise them on this, that's a difficult one, to be honest. I think the classical way is probably start at a big corporation, learn the big corporation way of working, and then transfer that to a small startup. But there's many, so that's the classical way. But there's many examples of people that go directly into a startup and being just as successful. So I don't know whether there's a recipe. So people should just follow their their path. And if the path that they take originally is not giving them what they expect in terms of results, they can always change.
Do you worry for them, or do you have experience with the glass ceiling for women in technology that we speak a lot about it nowadays? Do you still see it happening? Do you hope that for their generation this won't be an issue anymore?
So the glass ceiling is something that I guess, especially when you start getting to higher levels, this is when you probably start experiencing, because there's less and less women at the high level, executive levels. And then you probably need to start adapting your style to from qualities that might have gotten you to that point to qualities that might get you further. I'll give you an example. I mean, generally, women are perceived as more caring, compassionate, which are wonderful qualities, because this is why women are able to, even on a video camera, they have the intuition to catch a problem and resolve it early in the process. And, this is stereotypes. So of course, people are different, but generally, women are more compassionate, more caring. They're great communicators and they have great presentation skills, and that's why often they might go into a direction that is in a more supporting role. At the same time, those qualities are critical for a successful leadership roles at the top as well. But you would be expected to demonstrate some of the more manly qualities as stereotypes. Of course, I'm speaking like assertiveness and decisiveness, and sometimes to be a little too straight to get to your point. That assertiveness thing, usually women achieve it in a different way. So I wouldn't advise for women to change their style or not be authentic, because I think authenticity is one of the most important things. But just to adapt to the different environment. If you're in a room with men only, maybe you need to just adapt a little bit your style and still be unique, but get your point through if you have to. Because I've spoken to different forums, women in tech and women in business, and often women, specifically in tech, they say sometimes we are not heard because we're in a room full of men and their style is different, and our more delicate approach doesn't get through. Usually what I would say is, number one, be self-confident. You demonstrate that confidence. I mean, don't stay in the corner. Demonstrate the confidence. And sometimes it takes you to really push yourself. I mean, I tell my daughters, when I was a little girl, I was a shy girl. I was really, really shy. I would, when teachers get me to examine me, I would blush and be all red. But I was always best in the class, and I knew I'm good. And I said, I don't care whether I'm blushing or not. I'll say exactly what I have to say. And that taught me, while being shy, kind of in today's world, when I'm operating on a business level, when I walk in a room, when I don't know anyone, first I take a gasp, right? I am, I feel, first sense, I feel a little uncomfortable. But the second part, I'll go to that room and I'll introduce myself. And then I go and introduce myself, and people open up because they like confident people. So push yourself a little bit and demonstrate that confidence.
What do you say? What do you tell yourself exactly in the second before you enter the room and introduce yourself? Do you have some kind of mantra or a secret sentence that you tell yourself?
I can do it.
Okay.
I always say to myself, I can. By the way, I do some public speaking and speak in front of a lot of people. Before I go to the stage, I said, I'm good, I can do it. Mm-hmm. And I go. Mm-hmm. Because you have that moment of like, you stop breathing for a second. So breathe. Like some of the presentation skill training is like breathe, and just convince yourself this is your spot and you can do that. And then it takes just a few seconds and you're in the flow. You just convince yourself you can do it. And it's not easy. I know it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. But we should practice. Just because it didn't work out the first time, because sometimes we can look silly, right? I can do it, and then you stumble across. And that's okay, fall down, stand up, and continue.
This can be also kind of, very charming to others, because everyone have their weaknesses. And sometimes I actually know that when people see my weaknesses, they kind of, feel closer to me.
Yeah.
This is also a way that I can be a leader, like, okay, you get up and then...
yeah. People make mistakes and just admit it, hey.
Exactly. And I think this is also very good quality and part of being authentic. There is so much more that I want to ask you, and I have the feeling that we can actually talk for long hours, but I will have to come to the final question. And the final question is a bit philosophical, but we ask it to all our guests because I believe that it reflects a certain mindset that we are trying to nurture here in our innovation community. And the question is, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for a person that stay behind their words. So people say, I want to be remembered for that I'm a person that does what it says and says what it does.
Oh, I love it. It's great. Thank you.
In the next episode of the Recursive podcast, Georgi meets the founder of the cybersecurity company Log Sentinel and an expert in e-governance, Bojidar Bojanov.
Solving a problem that exists out there and that's not yet solved or not yet properly solved, or there are parts of the market that are unserved, combined with the knowledge and the expertise of the founders is kind of a recipe for creating a startup.
And if you are just as passionate about innovation as we are, hit subscribe for the Recursive podcast on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. We're everywhere.